Come on, Evan.
Drink some water real quick before we start. Quality H2O. This morning, we're talking about Nehemiah 5. Woo! And when I read it, I was trying to think of how I would describe Nehemiah in the passage. I came up with this sweet term, bold humility. I was super pumped and excited that I'd come up with something that sounded really spiritual and awesome. And so I went to look it up online to see if anyone else had thought of it, and many people had.
Everybody.
So. But it's cool. That's what the humility part of bold is. So, I want to start off with a story. Pictured here is my father and myself. Growing up, I was told that I looked just like my father, and so, Karina, that's what I'm going to look like in 15 years. Sorry.
Yeah.
A little snapshot in the future there. I want to tell a story about how my father led with bold humility. An example he said. I grew up a swimmer. My mom was a swimmer, and she got me into it. And we would have practices twice a day. So we'd get up for swimming from like 6 a.m. to like 7 a.m. So we had to get like 5:30. And then we'd have practice in the afternoon too. But in the morning, our coach wasn't the most consistent person to be there. And so sometimes we'd get there and practice wouldn't start until 6:15 because he got there late. Or sometimes we would just leave because he didn't show up. And as a kid, that was exciting. You'd sit there and you'd be like, I wonder if he's not going to come today because then we don't have to practice. We can just go home and sleep. It'll be great. But as a parent, that sucks. Because you wake up early and you take your kid to this thing that you're paying for your kid to do, and then the person whose job it is to coach them isn't there.
Yeah.
So out when I was in middle school, I don't remember exactly what grade or age, my dad became the president of the swimming board. I don't know what you would call it, but like he was the president of the club. And he wanted to make that morning more consistent. And so he drafted a contract. There hadn't been a contract for a swim coach in Sitka since like it started in like the 70s, which was really weird. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna make a contract. It'll just be some basic things that we can hold you accountable for. And the coach was like, sweet, okay, I'll do that. And then the day that he was supposed to sign this contract, instead, he tenders his resignation and opens a competing club. Sitka's not that big. And so, for a small town and a small swim community, for there to be a divide, sucked. It was not good. It wasn't fun. I had friends who were like, I don't know who I want to swim for. And my dad found himself in the middle of this mess, something he didn't expect, or wasn't even looking for. He was just trying to lead. And so for the next, 10 years, it was kind of awkward to have a competing swim club there. And there were people that didn't like my father because they blamed it all on him. And he had to deal with it. It just wasn't a great situation. But my dad wasn't doing this like for himself. He wasn't getting anything out of it. He was doing it for us, for the swimmers. And he ended up with this really bad situation. But that's what leading with bold humility is.
Yeah.
You're leading boldly, but you're not doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
And so Nehemiah 5 gives some great examples of how Nehemiah leads with bold humility, just like my father did. So we'll just start in Nehemiah chapter 5, verse 6 through 13. A little background before we start. They're building a wall, and there isn't enough food. There's not enough food to the point of where families are selling their children to make ends meet. They had to make a decision between, do I let my whole family starve, or do I feed most of my family? And so it sounds awful, like what parent would ever sell their child, but that's where they were. That's the point that they were at right here. So we'll just jump in verse 6. Nehemiah, verse 1. When I heard their complaints, I was very angry. After thinking it over, I spoke out against these nobles and officials. I told them, "You are hurting your own relatives by charging interest when they borrow money." Then I called a public meeting to deal with the problem. At the meeting, I said to them, "We are doing all we can to redeem our Jewish relatives who have had to sell themselves to pagan foreigners, but you are selling them back into slavery again. How often must we redeem them?" And they had nothing to say in their defense. Then I pressed further. "What you are doing is not right. Should you not walk in the fear of our God in order to avoid being mocked by our enemy nations? I myself, as well as my brothers and my workers, have been lending the people money and grain. But now let us stop this business of charging interest. You must restore their fields, vineyards, olive groves, and homes to them this very day, and repay the interest you charged when you lent them money, grain, new wine, and olive oil." They replied, "We will give back everything and demand nothing more from the people. We will do as you say." Then I called the priests and made the nobles and officials swear to do what they had promised. I shook out the folds of my robe and said, "If you fail to keep your promise, may God shake you like this from your homes and from your property." The whole assembly responded, "Amen," and praised the Lord, and the people did as they promised. So in this passage, Nehemiah has to take a stand. He has to put himself in an awkward situation. These people weren't people outside of his group. These were Israelites. These were people who lived in Jerusalem. These were his own people that were doing this to their own people. And so Nehemiah has to step in. He has to stand up for the unfortunate. He has to potentially navigate what could be an awkward situation, a rift in the people.
Yeah.
If they don't listen to him, then you got another problem you got to deal with. So I wrote a few things down about what a good leader is, what we can learn from Nehemiah. A good leader humbly listens to the needs of their followers and acts accordingly. A good leader boldly confronts opposition when needed. And a good leader calls people to fulfill their promises. Nehemiah listened to the needs of the followers. And he didn't just listen and go, "Okay, that's your problem." He acted. He did something. He stood up for it. And then he boldly confronted the opposition. And the opposition wasn't an easy enemy to do that to. It was the leaders in his group. And a good leader calls people to fulfill their promises. Yeah. We'll jump back in verse 14 through 18. And we'll read a little bit more about Nehemiah and his leading. Verse 14 says, "For the entire 12 years that I was governor of Judah, from the 20th year to the 32nd year of the reign of King Artaxerxes, neither I nor my officials drew on our official food allowance. The former governors, in contrast, had laid heavy burdens on the people, demanding a daily ration of food and wine, beside 40 pieces of silver. Even their assistants took advantage of the people, but because I feared God, I did not act that way. I also devoted myself to the working on the wall and refused to acquire any land. And I required all my servants to spend time working on the wall. I asked for nothing, even though I regularly fed 150 Jewish officials at my table, besides all the visitors from other lands. The provisions I paid for each day included 1 ox, 6 choice sheep or goats, and a large number of poultry. And every 10 days we needed a large supply of all kinds of wine. Yet I refused to claim the governor's food allowance because the people already carried a heavy burden." To me, this cuts to my heart more, because it's not one instance where Nehemiah had to show boldly, but this is an everyday. These are little decisions that Nehemiah makes to set an example about what it means to lead. So 3 more things we can learn about a good leader is a good leader humbly sets a godly example in their own life every day. A good leader has a mission in which they are boldly devoted. And a good leader is not a burden to others, but a source of strength. Nehemiah was able to feed people in a famine. He didn't care about making sure that he was great and powerful, and that he was leading in a way to become all great. But he was leading to make sure everybody was taken care of. He fed 150 Jewish officials, and he had fed people who weren't even there, visitors who were coming in. He was feeding them, making sure that they were taken care of. He had a mission. They were building a wall, and he was devoted to that. He was making sure people were working hard on that, and he wasn't a burden to anybody. He was a source of strength. Nehemiah did not lead for the benefit of himself, but for the benefit of others. The very last verse highlights this. Nehemiah says, "Remember, O my God, all that I have done for these people and blessed people." Nehemiah didn't lead others. He didn't lead for the benefit of himself, but for the benefit of others.
Yeah.
And he went to God with it. He praises God. He doesn't do this selfishly thinking he's going to get something out of it. But he does this for these people because he knows it's what they need. It's a form of love to lead this way. In John 15, Jesus says, "This is my commandment, love each other in the same way I have loved you. There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends." When I read this in the context of what Jesus is saying, I can think of his actual physical life on earth and laying that down and dying. But when I read it in the context of Nehemiah 5, I think of it more as laying down your life, meaning that your wants, your desires, your passions are less important. You lay them down below other people's lives, and you make sure that they're taken care of. And in this way, a person who leads also loves. So the question I have for you this morning is, what are you leading? I personally am a believer that everybody leads in some capacity. Nobody is a complete follower. Nobody just mindlessly does what someone else tells them to do. But you make choices. And at the baseline, you lead your own life. If you lead nothing else, you lead your own life. But you could have an official leadership position. You could be Nick or Keith here. But it's not just them either. You could be leading other people to Christ. You could be in a leadership position at work. You could have a leadership role in a group, project, at school. There's a bunch of different ways you can lead. And when you have the spotlight on you as a leader to set an example. The follow-up question is, are you leading with bold humility? Are you leading for yourself to look better, to put yourself forward, to pad your resume? Sure. Or are you leading for the benefit of others? Willing to stand up, willing to navigate awkward situations, willing to take the blame, willing to be hurt in a situation where you have no right to be hurt, but you're doing it for someone else.